I normally don't do this kind of thing, but real quick, I just started a Patreon, so anybody that likes my stuff and be interested in supporting me, you can go there. I've also had a Ko-fi page for a long time, but, some people might prefer Patreon, and I figure it's best to just provide as many options as possible. But just so you know, there's no perks or tiers or anything. Both the Patreon and the Ko-fi page are just for people that would like to donate to me and nothing more. There will be links in the description to both of those for anyone interested in supporting me, and if you do, you have my sincerest gratitude. Now on to the video. Well, I can't really say I was disappointed with Sonic Origins Plus, because to be disappointed, I would have had to have some kind of positive expectations for this. But I did not, and unfortunately, it seems like my expectations were pretty much met almost exactly. There's the new stuff, Knuckles in CD, Amy as a playable character, blah blah blah, whatever. But to me, far more important than those things are, did they fix Sonic Origins? Did they address all of the problems that the game originally had when it came out? And unfortunately, in almost all cases, the answer would be no. Loading up a game for the first time, immediately you see, nope, they didn't fix the blurriness issue, they didn't add any kinds of filters for like CRT effects or anything like that. What I was surprised by, though, is they actually fixed the roll lock in Sonic 1 and 2, so now you can actually control yourself when jumping from a roll, so the drop dash actually works now. So credit where it's due, there is at least one thing that's been fixed with this, which means that this is technically exceeding my expectations. Unfortunately, in my time with Sonic Origins, that is the only fix that I was able to find. Almost every other major issue this game has is still very much present in this game, like, for example, why can't I skip the score tallying at the end of the level? Why are there still only 2 jump buttons? Why did they not give Sonic the peel out and insta-shield in every game? Why can I not skip the time travel cutscene in Sonic CD? And speaking of CD, in my initial video for Sonic Origins, because I only played the game for 2 hours, I missed so many other issues that this game has. Like how the leaderboards for every level are heavily exploitable using like Supersonic or Hypersonic or starting a level in a different time. There are so many ways to cheat the leaderboard system to get way better times than would normally be possible. And in the case of CD specifically, the end cutscene is totally messed up, and it doesn't even play the correct audio track. It's totally borked, and that was not fixed with Origins Plus. And then going into Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I was hoping that maybe they fixed the game, Did they fix the physics issues? No. Did they fix the horrible audio quality? No. They didn't do fucking anything. The only problem that they seem to have fixed is the roll locking in Sonic 1 and 2, but pretty much everything else is exactly what it was, which is so baffling to me that you release a game that has a ton of problems that everybody talks about and everybody points out when it comes out, and then a year later you make an enhanced version of that game that people have to pay for, and you don't fix any of those problems. Like, fucking hell, man, is this Sonic 06 all over again? Release an unfinished, broken game and you fix none of those problems, instead you make paid DLC? Like, what are they doing? I mean, I know what they're doing. They're milking these old games for as much as they possibly can because they know that the average consumer is not going to care about all of these problems. And that's a really positive aura that you want to have surrounding your Celebration Anniversary Collection game, right? And then, as far as the new stuff they've added to Sonic Origins, okay, Knuckles in Sonic CD, that should have just been there from the very beginning, so it's kind of fucked up that they're charging for that. Amy as a playable character is cool, but her moveset is incredibly underwhelming in my opinion. All she does is that if you hold the jump button while in the air, she spins her hammer around her, which increases the size of her hitbox, and then if you continue to hold it when you hit the ground, then Amy will run forward a short distance while continuing to hammer in front of her. And that's it. That's all that Amy has going on, which essentially just makes her an inferior Sonic, because the hammer function is pretty similar to the Insta-Shield. It does persist for as long as you hold the button, so that's a minor difference, but in practicality, I have found that it is way, way less useful than the Insta-Shield is because it doesn't have any invincibility on it. So, for example, you can't use it to hit Big Arm, and multiple times when I would try to jump into an enemy with the hammer, I would still end up getting hit, even though the whole point of it, I presume, is to extend your hitbox and let you hit things that you normally wouldn't be able to, so it's kind of just bad. And then the little run you get after doing it, that's essentially just like a worse drop dash because it gives you very, very little speed, and the act of hammering in front of you as you run is effectively the same thing as just rolling. The only difference is the change to the physics properties because you're running instead of rolling, which is a really minute difference that 95% of players are not going to take advantage of. The only kind of cool thing I found is that while you're doing the hammer run, you can instantly change directions, and that's kinda neat, but I can't really think of many practical applications for that. So outside of just being able to play as Amy, I see very little reason to play as Amy. Her moveset is just kinda blah. Unlike all the other characters, there's nothing you can do with Amy that you can't do with Sonic. You know, Tails and Knuckles, they play similarly to Sonic 2, but their abilities enable them to take different shortcuts and go through entire different routes on the levels and platform in different ways. Whereas Amy, she can't do anything different to what Sonic can do, except that she can do less. They could have done a much, much better job with giving Amy a unique moveset in this game, I think. You know, take some inspiration from her moveset from the Sonic Advance games. You want to keep it to one button to be consistent with the classic games, that's totally fine. But you could have done a little bit more than that. You could have given Amy a higher jump than the other characters. You could have given her up and jump on the ground would be her hammer high jump. You could have made it so that her hammer could hit springs for the same effect that it does in the advanced games. Hell, I already think that Superstars has a better moveset for Amy, because in that game, seemingly, she just always has the hammer out when she jumps, so it's just like a passive buff that she gets, and her air action instead is a double jump, which at least is something, you know? It's better than what we have here. Like, man, why is everything with Sonic gotta be a monkey's paw situation where it's like, okay, we're gonna give you Amy as a playable character just like you asked, but we're not actually gonna give her an interesting, cool moveset to make playing her worthwhile. Gee, thanks. And then when we're talking about the Game Gear games that they've added, oh my goodness, you load one of these up for the first time and you are immediately assaulted with the atrocious audio quality. What the hell happened here? I've seen people online saying that they added an echo effect, but I'm not really sure if that's the case here. To me, this sounds like just horrible, atrocious audio quality due to poor emulation or something. Oh my god, the audio quality on these 8-bit games is not at all acceptable. Jesus Christ, they sound so bad. And then on top of that, when you're playing these games, they're not full screen for some reason. They're in this tiny little box. Like, is this to preserve integer scaling? Because why the hell would that even matter when you have the games looking all blurry and ugly anyway? It doesn't even make a difference at that point. Also, why do we only get the Game Gear versions? In a lot of cases with the 8-bit Sonic games, they were primarily developed for Master System and then ported over to the Game Gear. And in the case of a game like Sonic 2, they did not adjust the game for the Game Gear, and so it is super screen crunched and zoomed in. This game is infamous for how bad and hard it is because you can't see anything, but that's only a problem in the Game Gear version because the game was designed for the Master System where you had much more screen space and you could see way more. And for some strange reason, anytime Sega re-releases these 8-bit Sonic games, they only ever do the Game Gear games. They never give us the Master System versions. Like, seriously, they couldn't have been bothered to give us the better versions of these games, or even better than that, give us both versions of these games so that players can pick for themselves. The fact that they've only ever released the Game Gear versions of all these 8-bit Sonic games makes me think that they're just too lazy because they're like, well, we have a Game Gear emulator. To do the Master System versions, we'd have to make a Master System version, and, we just can't be bothered to do that, so fuck it, whatever, who cares? Like, is that how cynical this game is? Like, I feel like I'm not being unreasonable here with this stuff, right? Like, is someone gonna be like, you really expect them to make a working Master System emulator just so they can give us those versions of these games? Yes, I do. Presumably, they want Sonic Origins to be the way people play these classic games for the foreseeable future, so you would think that they should probably be the best versions of those games they could be. But, that would take a lot of work and actually caring about the product that you're selling, and this is Sonic Origins. This is a cynical cash grab. We can't have that. And by the way, as you would expect with the emulation of these 8-bit games, they run just as terribly as they did on the original hardware, because, making an emulator that'd be able to overclock and actually run these games decently, nah, that's definitely way too much work. Also, this is a very minor point, but when you're on the menu to select the Game Gear games, in the description for Sonic 1, it says that it's a port of the Genesis game, which is not true. It's a completely different game. Why are they just lying? Very, very strange. So that's Sonic Origins Plus. Very little has changed, and unfortunately, all of the new stuff suffers from a lot of the same problems that the original release had. I swear to God, man, it feels like this whole collection is just cursed or something. But I do want to make it clear, I don't think Sonic Origins is awful. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's a decent way to play most of these games. Minus the 8-bit ones and maybe 3 and Knuckles, but, for a casual fan, for someone that's not played these games in a long time, it's still fine. It's honestly probably the best way you can play any of these games officially. But for anyone that actually really cares about these games, Origins is most definitely not sufficient, and no amount of playable Amy is going to change that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go refund this game again. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.